Coming up on Need to Know, barring access for some reporters to the White House isn't new, and it isn't just a national media issue. Local journalists and news directors explain how restricting access in the Rochester region ultimately impacts transparency and much more. Also on the show, have you ever tried getting around Rochester without a car? 3 local filmmakers bring you into their world to get a glimpse of what it's like to move beyond the automobile. And the restaurant industry can be a real pressure cooker. We'll take you to a new spot in Rochester where owners and employees believe their restaurant can be a dream maker and a community builder. Don't go anywhere. Need to Know starts right now. In the world of media, journalists aim to cover the news, not become news. They work to gain trust and access to key sources and stories, not become barred and banned from the voices the public needs to hear from. Restricting media outlets from access to politicians, law enforcement agents, education leaders, and others is an ongoing problem for journalists, including those in the Rochester region. Joining me to dig into this issue beyond the headlines as of late is Jane Flash, television journalist for 13 WHAM News. Casey Clark, journalist and news director at NBC 10. Sarah Taddeo, reporter for the Democrat and Chronicle. And Randy Gorman, journalist and news director for WXXI Public Broadcasting. And it's great to have all my journalism colleagues here with me today, so thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us.
So just to start, Jane, explain this. To what degree would you say access and all that word encompasses in the world of media impacts the work that we do, and what happens when we don't get it?
Access is everything. If you don't have access to basic information, you can't give that information to the public. And a lot of times the public doesn't know what they're missing. So in other words, if you're prevented from a freedom of information request, or you're denied access to a meeting, or you're denied cameras in a courtroom, people in the public cannot actually take time off of work and sit in that courtroom. In one way, we report what happens so they learn through our observations and all of that, but to be able to see for themselves and to sometimes see what they're missing is a really important component, because I think when people hear that the press is barred from a press conference or barred from the White House, I don't think they often get the full impact of what that is.
It was big news last Friday, when we heard that some media outlets said that they were barred from a White House press briefing. And I was in California at the time. It was all the talk on the streets of California. I get back to Rochester, it's all the talk at the airport. And I think there were different perspectives in terms of that issue and exactly how that issue was covered. But I wanted to get your thoughts. When you first heard the news, what did you think? And did it hit home for any of you?
I think in one sense it hits home in that, not that we've had something obviously of that notoriety or that scale, but to some extent what happens in Washington may set a bit of a tone for the press overall. And the main thing I'm worried about is that there'll be this perception that either it's a good thing or a bad thing, mainly the people who think it's fine for the press to be excluded from events like that. I think sometimes that feeling, if people agree with that on a national level, it may filter down to what they see happening locally. I wouldn't want to see an official in Rochester, a mayor, county executive, even the town supervisor saying, well, look, they did this in Washington, maybe we have the right to kind of have a press pool or gaggle where we exclude certain people based on perhaps who we don't like at the time. I don't know if it's going to set that kind of tone, but that would be my main concern.
But beyond that, do we experience that here, though? I mean, in what ways would you say you have experienced, whether trying to get access to a certain politician or trying to get information for a story, Freedom of Request Act, and you've been delayed or you've been denied?
Yeah, I've definitely had situations like that with freedom of information requests and meetings, often where it's like a crowd issue, let's say, in the meeting, and some people will be shut out. Like one meeting I was recently attending, they were wanting to shut the door, the police, and I said, hey, I'm media, and there's people out here who deserve to be in this meeting, and maybe you need a bigger room, I don't know, but you can't do that, basically. So it comes, I think, for me, in times when I'm out in the field or in interviewing folks, where something will come up and you have to kind of right there say, you know what, this is what I believe as a journalist. This is what I think the public needs to know, and I think we kind of need to address this issue right now, because otherwise, to me, it's not going to get dealt with in a day-to-day fashion.
And sometimes it's not done with a malicious intent. Sometimes people simply do not know the laws. You go to a small town meeting and they don't know what the law says about access, public access, when they can close the door, personnel matters, but you can't lump everything into a personnel matter. So I think sometimes they just are not educated enough in certain places, and they feel like they're an adversary with you when you try to say this is what the law actually says. And there are some times where you can, sort of push your way in using what you know about the law, but there are other times that door is closed anyway, and you have to sort it out later. And that's problematic because, do you risk creating a scene, being arrested for something that may not even really be a story, but again, not because somebody's being malicious, but because they simply don't know what they're supposed to do.
Casey, what are your thoughts?
Well, I've spent a lot of time on the phone with our attorneys. I've only been the news director at Channel 10 for 6 months, and there hasn't been a week that's gone by where I'm not talking to our attorneys asking for their help. Whether it's a small town judge kicking people out who have a right to be there. We're having trouble getting documents from, and I won't call out individual agencies at this point, but even if you look at the White House, I've been putting in FOIA requests with the White House for 20 years, and I've never had the kind of difficulty that I have now. If you go to the White House webpage, the FOIA page doesn't exist anymore. It was taken down.
And FOIA is Freedom of Information Act again, so that's how you request documents from public agencies. And I will say, New York State, is run by Governor Cuomo. We have FOIL here, F-O-I-L, Freedom of Information Law, but we're stymied as well here on that level. It takes forever to get requests back. Often you get back incomplete documents. I can recall a set of documents that I got recently where every single line was redacted. Black line, black line, black line, black line. And they hide behind, well, this is a privacy issue, this is, could lead to litigation. They hide behind the laws that exist to protect certain things. But ultimately, you can't even get enough information to know if you're being stymied.
One of the things, though, that's kind of nice when a bunch of the federal agencies were told that they were no longer allowed to communicate, and a bunch of journalists got upset about that. And my response to it was, we are about to enter a golden age of leaking. Because I've always found that I get my best stories not from the top, but from the people doing the work who want that work to get out. And when they feel they're being suppressed, they find a way to get it out.
And let's also just want to make it clear, at least from my perspective, and I've been working in the state in media organizations for a long time. This is nothing new. Maybe the intensity, and especially because of social media, it's getting more PR. But over the years, I've often had mayors, other officials say, to department heads, they try to clamp down. You will not talk to the media. So when you do, as Casey mentioned, you try to talk to them on a regular open basis. They won't talk to you, so you really depend on sources, unnamed sources, very often, because these people think that their job's going to be in jeopardy if they do talk to you. So we really depend on that kind of access. Only because, again, there are a certain number of officials, and this has been this way for years, when they feel some of the information coming out is not to their benefit, they will try to clamp down on their department heads. And who gets hurt? Again, I just want to say it's not just the media, it's who we're representing. I mean, it's true, we're not elected, but we're trying to be a voice for the people. We can't do that if we can't do our jobs.
In what ways do we work around these types of difficulties? And maybe you have an example that you can share when you did have to do that to make sure that the story did get out there in full to the public.
Yeah, I think what Randy was saying, Friday's news, I sort of took that as almost a challenge and a charge to say, okay, I need to do my job 10 times better than I was doing it before, in the sense of finding ways around, I guess, not in a malicious way, but to say, who are the other people I can speak with, who might, get an email from their department head saying, don't talk to the media, and might say, what, I'm going to anyways because something, this issue or topic needs to get out to the public. So who might actually work with me here, and I need to do, put my my nose to the grindstone and do that kind of work to find those sort of sources so that I can get that topic out for the public to know, because that's of course what we're all working for, and I think a lot of people within these agencies might hold that view as well and might be willing to be with us there.
And I think stories about the process are what's needed right now as people are clamping down, to show the public the redacted document. We waited 6 months for this. We got our 100 pages and every line but one is blacked out. We need to show what we do and what we're trying to do and how it's being thwarted so people understand the very real consequence. And by the way, this was taxpayer money for this agency. You're paying for this, but you can't find out what's going on. And I think we need to open up that process that often is it's key to what we do as journalists, but the public doesn't often know about that. And I think as the walls kind of close in on some of these things, it can only help to show the lack of transparency in what we're doing to try to get information.
Let me ask this in regards to what happened with the White House press briefing. Some media outlets like Time and the Associated Press, they were invited, they opted not to participate. They said this was a sign of solidarity. But are there times when journalists might see access denied as a benefit when it happens to maybe their other colleagues in the media field because they got an exclusive?
No.
Yeah.
Explain why.
No. As a matter of fact, right after the first of the year, I sent out information to all of the government spokespeople in our community that our reporters are no longer allowed to interview them. They can only talk to the officials who are elected or the policymakers or the decision makers, because spokespeople, it's like getting hearsay. Those people, they don't actually know what was going on inside the mind of the person that made the decision. So we need to hold more people to account, and when you talk to spokespeople, you can't do that.
We are out of time for now, but I want to thank you, all my guests, for sharing their perspectives on this important topic. We'd like to hear your thoughts on this issue. You can join the conversation on Twitter by using hashtag NTKWXXI. For some, traveling throughout Rochester using anything but a car is unthinkable. For others, it's a necessity, a way of life, or a hope. According to national surveys and studies, including one from the Brookings Institution, people want more walkable cities in the U.S. In addition, Brookings found more than half of millennials want to live places where they don't need access to a car. Examining transportation and mobility issues is the focus of a film series called Rochester Street Films. The first event in the series takes place this month, and its theme, Moving Beyond the Automobile. Here's a sneak peek at the 3 filmmakers selected for the event and their stories.
My first documentaries were always about cycling, a lot of films about cycling, and so this year I'm saying, okay, well, instead of just making my viewpoint in my film, let me go and find other viewpoints and use my knowledge as a filmmaker to combine them together to something that's informative. A biker may have a lot of negative feelings towards a car, and a car owner may have some negative feelings towards a biker, but maybe hearing both voices together can start to bring some dialogue together and maybe some mutual respect.
When you're coming onto a crosswalk like this, this is a nuisance because you need momentum to get up an incline. So to have a dip like that, your wheel can get caught.
Yeah, I could see that, especially if there's been some snow that's built up or there's ice in there and you could possibly fall back. Has it ever happened to you?
Oh, absolutely. I have fallen out of my chair several times, particularly when there's snow and I don't see it.
What do you do when that happens?
You just get up and you get back in your chair. But if you don't have the mobility to do that, you have to rely on people that see this happen and help you.
I love cars, but when I'm in a car, I'm experiencing that car, and that's what I'm doing. When I'm walking, I'm experiencing my surroundings. I mean, you saw me earlier, I was just sitting out there kind of taking it in. I didn't even know Susan B. Anthony was from here. I come here and people are like, oh, that's Susan B. Anthony Bridge. I'm like, why is it named after her? Like, this is where the women's movement was, and that's so cool. And all these things have meaning in that.
Rochester Street Films is a project of the nonprofit Rochester Reconnect. It's also a partnership with Floating Home Films. Joining me to talk about the upcoming film series and the work to create a community connecting all people through a robust transportation network is Mike Governale, president of Rochester Reconnect. Nate Butler, a filmmaker involved in the Rochester Street Film series. Alex Freeman, also a filmmaker involved in the series. And Erica Jones, filmmaker and systems advocate at the Center for Disability Rights. Welcome to all of you, and thanks for being here.
Thank you.
So before we jump in and talk about the series, Mike, I want you to explain just a little bit about the work and approach of Rochester Reconnect. Your team says that Rochester must rebalance its transportation network. Talk about what that means and the ways in which you're trying to do that.
That's right. So Reconnect Rochester is a nonprofit that works to promote transportation alternatives. Basically, transportation options that make it easy for everyone, regardless of your economic status or your physical ability, your age, where you live, to get around our region. And we think that that's good for our economy, it's good for the environment, it's good for our own personal well-being, it's good for our pocketbooks. If we have choices to get around, that means public transportation, that means cycling, that means good pedestrian connections. Alternatives to the automobile. Because we've seen over the past 60, 70 years, Rochester, like all American cities really, have really overplanned for the automobile at the expense of pedestrians and people.
And you've done interesting work, important work. I caught the research that you did on looking at the link between poverty and transportation, and actually how public transit can be a solution to some of those issues centered around poverty in the city of Rochester.
That's right.
Now you're further informing the public with this film series, Rochester Street Films. In what ways, all the filmmakers are here, in what ways do you want this series to reach the public, in particular your films? And we'll start with you, Erica.
Well, it's nice to be able to get out the disability perspective, for one. Very often when you talk about transportation, we are forgotten. We already have limited options in Monroe County. So to get this conversation out, come up with ideas that is accessible for everyone, I'm just hoping to open some eyes.
What about you, Nate?
Basically, my take on it is I grew up in the garage working with cars with my dad, and for a long time I lived in a small town where anywhere you were going, you were on a busy road. You know, it's not like blocks like in a city. And so I grew up thinking that a car was just the right way to get around. And I'm glad that I came to Rochester and realized that I'm learning a lot more about the place that I live if I'm on foot. And I'm a lot more connected to it, and I meet people on the streets. And I think that's something that a lot of people who choose to drive everywhere are missing out on, because when you're in a car, you're not seeing all those people around you. You're just watching stoplights. And I'm hoping that I can show some people that if they choose to be on foot, they can be a lot more connected.
And we discovered in your film, well, a little bit of the preview of it, you discovered the home of Susan B. Anthony was here when you got out of the car and actually explored.
Yeah, and I'm not from this area originally. I'm from Ohio. So a lot of that was very new to me, that people are telling me all these amazing things about the different landmarks, and that was horribly interesting, and it's something that I don't think I ever would have discovered if I had just driven to my destination.
What about you, Alex?
So I did a lot of cycling for the past couple years. I'm always riding around on my bike, and I've done a couple films advocating for cycling and you know, on foot transportation. And so for this film, I wanted to kind of look at at people who are using their car still, and like why, you know, where does it really fit into our lives right now? And so I'm trying to gather a kind of broad perspectives and listen to people some people who still want a car, because you know I definitely am trying to get rid of mine. But I'm trying to get all those viewpoints together so that all these people that come to see the films can hear and maybe compare them in their minds and go, okay, well now I understand why that person is driving right now, or maybe we'll have a hard time switching to on foot.
Is there, I guess I'm going to ask you about this, Mike. How do you want these films to translate to change in the city of Rochester? And is this kind of an appeal, I guess I would say, to the city to make changes in the necessary investments so that we can see some changes in our public transport?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say it's not just the city of Rochester. It's, transportation is a regional issue because many of our jobs are outside the city. Many of the places we need to go are not only downtown, but they're in the suburbs. So our public transportation system needs to better serve the places that we as a population need to get to, be more frequent. The city and the surrounding towns need to do a better job of maintaining pedestrian infrastructure and making sure there are no broken links and sidewalks and sort of the obvious things. But then I also think that we need smarter policies at a regional level around how we plan our communities, land use, the way we develop new communities and new commercial districts. Let's bring a little bit more development back into the core of our community so that we're not continually spreading out beyond the reach of transit and our existing infrastructure. So I'm hoping, Reconnect Rochester does a lot of this advocacy work, and people are familiar with me and the facts and studies that we spout all the time, which are very relevant. But with street films, we wanted to give the lens over to ordinary people and really hear their stories so that policymakers can hear straight from the mouths of people who use our infrastructure and watch them as they get around and see the particular challenges and barriers that they run into in their daily lives, things that I myself might not even think of.
To our filmmakers, is the goal for you with each of your respective films, do you want to impact those who come to view it, or do you want to impact actual change when it comes to transportation when we look at our region?
Well, for me, I think it's a little bit of both, because if you can expose the problem to the community first, then they can reach out to their legislators, they can reach out to the people who can actually put the change in, and with enough bodies, we can make that happen.
Yeah, I think the film is the initial message that you can send to people, or you can show or expose something to people, and then I mean, I try to do it in my own life, is to make the change, start walking or start biking. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sorry, Nate, about 10 seconds.
Mine's it's even just about like the way people live their lives, just not being in such a rush and feeling like they have to take a car, just really enjoying the place they're in and looking around and taking it in.
All right, well, we have to close for now, but everyone watching, you can still be a part of this conversation. The film series, Rochester Street Films, kicks off with its first event of the year, Moving Beyond the Automobile. That's on Wednesday, March 15th at 6:30 p.m. at the Little Theater. See all 3 films in full and stay for the panel discussion afterwards. All the details to get your tickets are on your screen. Well, there's some debate over America's favorite pastimes, but dining out is holding its own next to football and binge-watching TV shows. I recently visited a restaurant in Rochester hoping to solve any debate over where to eat. As I learned, this isn't just any restaurant, but a place where dreams and a mean dish of jerk chicken are being made every day. Take a look.
It was soul singer Jerry Butler who sang "Only the Strong Survive." While Butler was singing about love, that phrase is a pretty good description of the fast-paced and competitive restaurant industry. But at this spot, in Rochester's Neighborhood of the Arts, employees believe it doesn't just take strength, but also a village to survive. Nestled between Selena's Mexican restaurant and Knox Cocktail Lounge at Village Gate Square is a new restaurant that opened this year featuring Caribbean soul cuisine.
I got fried chicken, Tupelo fried chicken, and coconut rice and beans.
There's also the French fries, loaded with shredded jerk chicken and sriracha mayo. The chicken curry and rice bowl with grilled pineapples on the side, sweet tea, and other menu items hailing from the Caribbean and the southeastern part of the U.S. So you may be wondering, what makes this restaurant any different from others in Rochester?
It feels super community, homey. It just feels like you could get to know people, and especially if you're coming regularly, everybody knows your name sort of a thing. You could really get to know the students, and they'd get to know you.
That's right, students. The name of the restaurant is RICE. It's an acronym for Rochester Youth Culinary Experience. All the youth are currently enrolled in or recent graduates from here, East High School's Culinary Arts program.
We couldn't find anything that really fit what we were doing, being at the high school level and being a standalone business. So we're just moving forward, and any pointers people give us, we take them and do what we can with them and just figure it out as we go.
RICE is the brainchild of Kelly and Aaron Metris. The husband and wife team are anything but novices when it comes to the restaurant industry. They're also the owners of Selena's and partners at Knox Cocktail, the next-door neighbors of RICE.
We had this blank space, and we wanted to build it up from scratch, and we could show them what it took to open their own place if they ever wanted to do so in the future. So we reached out to all of the local high schools, and we got partnered up with East High, where we met Jeff Cristiano, who was amazing. And he jumped on the opportunity, and within minutes of meeting him, we were like, he's a perfect fit.
There's gonna be too much stuff in here. Gosh, empty. Be fine.
Creating the restaurant beyond its initial concept was the job of the East High students. Everything from the open kitchen, tiki hut, and surfboard bar came from their ideas.
Every meeting, I tried to make it my business to be there. The menu I had a part of, the decorations I had a part of, how everything was going to be presented to the public. That's what I brought to the table.
Kelly, Aaron, and I tried really hard to not influence the kids' decisions at all. What it's going to give to the students is an opportunity to take everything that they've learned and apply it to the real world. So Saturday night, when they're backed up, it's confusing and they're a little bit behind, they have to figure out, how do I get out of the weeds? How do I get out of this situation? I can't teach them that in a classroom.
You have to really be, on your feet, because you make food and you don't want to burn the food, and you don't want to make sure, you don't want to be, upset the customers. So you really have to be on top of things and always stay professional.
Rice, which operates as a nonprofit, took out $100,000 in loans to help with opening costs. Support from East High, Palmer Foods, and other local partners have played a key role in the process. The restaurant has a total of 18 current and former students on the payroll. They also receive work opportunity credits through their school. The hope now? To make Rice self-sustaining and a model that can be replicated down the road.
That's essentially our ultimate goal, is that the food's going to speak for itself, and the service is going to speak for itself, and the students are phenomenal, and that people are going to be impressed and they're going to come back and bring their friends.
Students say they want the restaurant to also become a gathering place for the community and a training ground for their future goals.
I'm definitely trying to take little mental notes and figure out what really does well and what doesn't. One day this is going to be me. This is going to be what I'm going to be doing.
I grew up in inner city, and the people that I know are from the inner city. You meet new different people, and you bring your side into others, so everybody just become one.
Cooking icon Julia Child said people who love to eat are always the best people. With its doors now open, Rochester's Youth Culinary Experience hopes those who love to eat will stop by, introduce themselves, and stay long enough to taste some jerk chicken and sweet tea. Be sure to check out Rochester Youth Culinary Experience at the Village Gate. While their doors are open now, they're celebrating their grand opening extravaganza on Tuesday, March 7th from 3:30 to 8 p.m. And that wraps up this edition of Need to Know, Rochester's news magazine program. I'm your host, Helen Bianduti-Hofer. Thank you for tuning in tonight and throughout the weekend here on WXXI. And we appreciate those of you who join us online at WXXInews.org. Have a great night.